Welcome back. So what do we know about Russia's role in the U.S. election? According to all of the U.S. intelligence agencies, the Russian security agency infiltrated the DNC email servers as far back as September of 2015. This summer, intermediaries linked to the Russian government passed the emails to WikiLeaks. The CIA concluded Russia's goal was to bolster Donald Trump's presidential campaign, but there is no evidence that hackers tampered with the actual vote tallies. And joining us for more on this situation is Kevin Griffith, the vice chair of the Sarasota County Democratic Party, Tony Sawyer, the treasurer of the Sarasota County Republican Party, and Serge Jorgensen, a partner at the cybersecurity group Silent, right?
Correct.
Okay. Serge, let me begin with you, because the obvious question is, how easy was this for the Russians to do?
I think that's a big problem that we face today is that it was very easy. At the end of the day, sending in a phishing message and getting somebody's password or guessing somebody's password that they haven't reset or they've reused somewhere else is very easy and commonplace.
You know, I hope all our corporate friends and business owners out there are listening to this right now, because you would think we know all this now, so why wouldn't an organization like the Democratic National Committee be aware of this and take preventative measures?
Because it's hard. It's hard to use 15 different passwords, or it's hard to reset your password and remember all these different credentials. So unless an organization is mature enough in their security to enforce password changes and to have multi-factor authentication and require a phone, a smartphone, and a password or something like that.
Do some companies and organizations do it right?
Completely, totally. The more mature organizations, certainly a lot of private industry, finance is probably the most mature. Healthcare is trying to catch up fast. Organizations that have had problems over the years have had to go through these learning experiences and have learned the hard way they need some security.
And now we have the politics of it all. Tony, I was listening to Kellyanne Conway in the package that we played a couple of minutes ago, and she almost inferred that it is un-American and unpatriotic for the president to be pushing this at this point. Do you agree with her?
Let me make a point in response to what he said first, and I understand your question. Yes, it's difficult, but my question is, why was it not difficult for the RNC to have
Well, first off, there is at least some reporting, although the RNC denies it, that the RNC was hacked, and other Republican organizations. In fact, Senator Lindsey Graham says he was hacked.
All right, in response to your question, I wasn't trying to avoid it. I don't avoid questions no matter how tough they are. I would not have responded the same way or put it the same way that Kellyanne did. But I would probably point out that who first discovered in our government these attacks on the Democratic emails? Probably one of our excellent security agencies, which work for President Obama. So if President-elect Trump knew something, then President Obama obviously knew something, and what did he do about it, if anything?
It's a legit question. Why didn't the president take more aggressive action when he first learned about that last summer?
Well, I think the answer to that's sort of self-explanatory or obvious. I mean, had he done that, it would have looked like he was putting his thumb on the scale of the election, and I think Donald Trump or the Republican Party would have come out and been very angry about that at the time. I think another issue that we haven't talked about, that I read an article today in Politico about how the Republican Party now has a more favorable rating or opinion of Vladimir Putin than it did before the election. And, you know, the Russian people and culture have a lot to be proud of, literature and music, but Vladimir Putin is not one of those things to be proud of.
Tony, we only have a couple of seconds left, but I want you to respond to that in terms of if the situation was reversed and the Republicans were the victims and Hillary was elected because of it, would you be calling for an impeachment hearing? Or
I would not be calling, because I don't think it's fair and I don't think it's necessary. But in response to Kevin's point on putting the thumb on the scale, what do you think he's doing now? I mean, he's practically hanging this guy up to dry, the president-elect, and I don't see any reason to do that.
All right, we are just getting started in this conversation. Let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have a look at your weekend forecast. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing Russia's interference in the U.S. election. Our guests tonight are Kevin Griffith of the Sarasota County Democratic Party, Tony Sawyer, the treasurer of the Sarasota County Republican Party, and Serge Jorgensen, a cybersecurity expert. Serge, the president said today we will respond to what Russia did at the time and place of our choosing. There are two questions in terms of what the U.S. should do and can do. To your knowledge, what are we capable of doing?
So, Alan, I think the answer is that we can do anything we want. You know, if it's connected to the internet, if it's connected to something that is reachable, be it power or cars or any systems that are interconnected like that, you're going to be able to influence it and impact it.
The question is, can we turn the lights off in Moscow?
That's a theoretical possibility. The same exists in any city in the U.S. Those systems ultimately are connected to the internet, and you can start influencing power and anything else you want to.
And that's a different question from should we turn off the lights in Moscow. But the other question is, if the U.S. responds, is it likely going to be in a way that we might not even know about?
It's one of the difficulties and the beauties of the cyberspace is that attribution is very difficult. And I think we're seeing that right now with the political parties. They're arguing about whether or not this was Putin and how far up this went inside the political infrastructure of Russia. We saw this in China also, that the government then blames some rogue group of hackers and everyone accepts that and moves on. So the deniability, plausible deniability in cyberspace is much easier than if we start dropping bombs.
So when the president says we are going to respond in the time and place of our choosing, that really is about 30 days or less, because no one really expects that President Trump is going to respond to the hacking. Tony, let me start with you. Do you think that the U.S. in some way or another should penalize Russia for what they did?
Well, I am a very reasonable individual. You know, I don't believe in shooting from the hip at the site of the slightest provocation. Somewhere along the line, it's like a bully, keeps pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. You might as well say, well, it hit me because I can't do anything about it, or this is enough. Now, I'm reminded of President Reagan, going back a few years, and Libya, the dictator of Libya, was doing all kinds of things, and he kept increasing, including that bombing of the Labelle nightclub in Germany.
Right, so
what he did was he sent a few aircraft loaded with bombs and bombed this compound. After that, you never heard from Libya again.
So are you saying that you would be supportive of President Obama doing something, and if the timing is not right, that responsibility falls to President Trump?
Yes, I would. But my impression is that this president, God bless him, he never did anything in the past 8 years. He's not going to do anything in the next 30 days either.
Kevin?
Well, I think the response may be something in between what Serge and Tony said. So it's as opposed to something we don't see and an all-out military response. I know that a year ago, I believe Bloomberg published an article that said Vladimir Putin might be the richest man in the world because of his corruption. And I think one place that the American cyber security network could go after is his money. You know, he has allegedly, from that article, owns part of Gasneft, which is one of their largest petro companies in Russia. Maybe something like that we don't necessarily see hits his pocketbook as opposed to infrastructure.
Let me ask both of you this. How angry are Democrats in Sarasota and Manatee about the hack, and do you believe it cost Hillary the election? And conversely, How unhappy are Republicans that this is really in the news now? And do you believe it is an attempt to delegitimize the election of Donald Trump?
I think on some level, the frustration that comes from local Democrats is that they felt like the coverage was unfair. The coverage was more about emails, 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 which ultimately, when it really gets down to it, was more tabloid than it was substance. And at the same time, the more substantive argument is that you had a foreign government, not just a tiny foreign government, a large foreign government, disrupt our election process, and nothing was done about it, and the president-elect is dismissing it.
Conversely, Tony, do you think that the coverage of the hacking right now is basically an attempt to delegitimize Donald Trump?
I think so, because the investigation could have been done and should have been done some time ago. And I'd like to point out that our intelligence agencies, were invited to come or requested to come before Congress. Now, those agencies work for President Obama, and they all refused. So where's this interest in the investigation? I don't see it. Now, as far as, yes, the emails were mostly aimed at candidate Clinton. On the other hand, I don't think the Democrats did any help in attacking President-elect Trump, because they really did a number on him.
Serge, the president made it clear today that the issue as he sees it is that the release, the drip release through WikiLeaks was embarrassing and sensationalized during the election, but he does say that he has not seen any evidence that it affected voting and that it is impossible to hack into our election systems. Would you agree with that? I mean, there's been so much talk about whether or not electronic voting is connected to the internet at all. What do you make of that?
You know, if I was asked to affect that system, it's certainly possible. It is generally not connected to the internet, but there are places the software is written that counts the votes, that tallies the votes, that scans the sheets that are the ballots that are filled in. So could you write some software? Could you introduce that software into the system? It would be difficult, but not impossible.
Was there not some reporting over the last couple of months that a contractor for the Florida Department of Elections was hacked?
Yes, and it's a question of would that person have had enough influence to affect voting in multiple states, or to introduce some software into the system that would skew results? Unlikely. You know, I would suggest or submit that's probably part of the other reconnaissance. We have a number of foreign powers that are just very interested in how we do business and the amount of information exchanged between the parties and the candidates. So to some extent, the foreign intelligence agencies are going to be trying to collect information because they maybe saw an opportunity to find out what the inner workings of the parties were all about.
Is the continuing danger here is that Americans, both Republican and Democrat, are going to be cynical, or, you know, in terms of future elections, and as technology improves, where is this going to go?
Alan, I think one point is that for the viewers at home, this impacts everyone. You know, years ago, I worked overseas with the USAID, which is the Agency for International Development. I had to get a background clearance. And I don't know, a year or two ago, I got a letter from the Office of Personnel Management saying my information was collected, and if I wanted 1 year of free cybersecurity, I could get it. I mean, it can impact anyone. Everyone has email. It can be hacked.
And in fact, just this week, we heard from Yahoo that millions of their customers were hacked, and that billions or millions were hacked, and that, you know, that is something that we all have to be.
And it crosses party lines. I mean, it's bipartisan. Anyone can get hacked. It doesn't matter what your political party is.
All right, we're going to take one more break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests, plus what some of you are saying about last night's topic, offshore drilling. Did Russian President Vladimir Putin intentionally sabotage the Clinton campaign? And what does the Kremlin stand to gain from a Trump presidency? Our guests join us now for final thoughts. Serge, I want to begin with you, because the question is, 4 years from now or 2 years from now, are we going to be better off in terms of protecting our computer systems, or is the technology evolving that it's always going to stay ahead of the game here?
Ellen, I really think we have to work together to make it harder for these guys. You mentioned during the break that 1 billion passwords were leaked from Yahoo 3 years ago. And if people are still using those passwords today, then they have to expect that those accounts are going to be accessed by organized crime, by foreign governments, by anyone that has an interest in that information. So,
Kevin, there are a lot of viewers, especially around here, who voted for Trump. Why should they be outraged?
Well, I think the concern is that in a little over 30 days, President-elect Trump is now going to be the president of everyone. And the CIA and the FBI that he's currently criticizing are then going to be working for all of us. And when they come forward with information about some other incident that might happen in the future, the people of America need to be able to rely on that information.
Tony, I'm going to give you the last word. Do you agree with that?
No, not really. That's a supposition, and I don't think that's going to happen. People, when they get in office, it's a different ballgame. They change. Now, let me tell you that, as an aside, I was not born in this country. When I became an American, I didn't become a Republican or a Democrat. I became a citizen of the United States. And I'm mad as hell that somebody overseas is trying to tinker with our election system, which should be sacred, which should be beyond reproach by anybody.
And that is the perfect place to leave this conversation. Thank you all for being here tonight. But before we go, some comments on last night's topic, offshore drilling. Environmentalists are bracing for a fight with the Trump administration. Some fear the president-elect's rhetoric about the deregulation and energy independence could mean more open season for drilling off of Florida's coast. And here's what some of you are saying. Ed Jamond writes, yes, we care about the planet. We also care about jobs. We care about what kind of liquid we put in our gas tanks to be able to get around. We also care about putting people to work. Drill, baby, drill. John Beavers writes, what happens to our economy when the Gulf is black with oil? Those few hundred jobs worth the entire main economic power in Florida, question mark? And Shannon Zielinski writes, yeah, you are so eager to drill when it's not in your backyard. We who live in Florida and the other states along the coast are the ones who have to deal with the mess and disaster when the wells leak into the Gulf. No, thank you. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Kevin Griffith is the vice chair of the Sarasota County Democratic Party. Tony Sawyer is the treasurer of the Sarasota County Republican Party. And Serge Jorgensen is a partner with the Sarasota-based cybersecurity group Silent.